Hi, I'm Amanda. Welcome to A-Team Chic Chat. I'll be one of your hosts today, along with my good friend Wendy. And
Howdy.
and we're having tech issues, but we're going to make it through this one.
Every time.
Chic Chat is the place where we celebrate the perfect fusion of style and adventure. And Jeeps have long been synonymous with ruggedness, freedom, and the spirit of adventure. And who says women can embrace all of that and more?
That's right. And that's what Chick Chat's all about, by the way. So welcome and thanks for listening to Team A, because we're going to continue a little series that we started a while back. Yes, I had some work things I had to take care of, but we're back and better than ever, I think. So we're going to talk about spotting and how that's going to apply to you being a new driver. Maybe you're new to off-roading, and we're just going to break it down into a couple of segments here. So let's just dive in. Amanda, what do you think? Let's just go for it.
Yes, this is one of my favorite topics, and it's because I think part of what makes this dynamic so great is because we learn from each other. And I know that you are a fantastic spotter and I'm a fantastic spottee. And so I think
Perfect.
we'll be able to give a great perspective on this one.
I think it's going to be awesome. And thank you for that great kudos. But I do love spotting, and I do have a natural ability, according to my mentors, both my husband, Bill, and Don Alexander. So we'll see how it goes. But anyway, let's talk about it. So we're going to break this down into verbal commands on this episode, because I think that's what the majority of everybody out there uses. You can look at YouTube videos. You can hear people talking and giving verbal commands. That's how I look at it. And you've experienced that, I know. I'm sure you have been out on trails and heard some screaming happening. What I talk about is I love to see, I call it a husband and wife team. Usually when you go to a major obstacle, it's fun to get out and watch. Spotting is essentially, for those of you who are new, is someone else's eyes looking at your vehicle and how the wheels are tracking. We did talk about that on one of our last episodes of how those wheels track in picking a line. So that person is outside of the vehicle who is looking at how that Jeep is moving and progressing through the obstacle. Now, the obstacle can be super easy. It can be simple. It can have some very precise, I need to put my tires exactly where I need to put them. And you sitting in that driver's seat cannot see as well, right? And you know that, Amanda, when you get close to an obstacle, it kind of disappears, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does. And inches can make the difference. So that's why you have to have that set of eyes outside.
Yeah. So having a good spotter is key to giving you the most and best experience on that trail. Now, as we talked before, not all spotters are created equal. Some are learning, some are progressing, some have been doing it forever, and that's how they do it. I'm relatively new on the scene, probably about 6-7 years, picked it up pretty quickly, but it has to do with, like I said before, tracking how the wheels and what they're doing, right? So your tires, when they're actually moving forward, I can see how that vehicle is going to track. And we talked about this before about tracking. It is how those tires actually move when you make turns or you adjust slightly. So the first thing I'm going to say about using a spotter is everything is done in very, very slow and tiny movements. So has anybody ever shared that with you, Amanda? Because I know that you have been spotted. Does anybody taken the time to explain why it's tiny movements?
Yeah. And I think with experience, you understand that a little bit more because, you know, like I said earlier, inches make the difference, right? And just getting off that line a little bit could, number one, be disastrous. Number two, could take a ridiculous amount of correction to get back on the right line.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So what we're going to talk about first is what we call verbal commands. Verbal communication allows the driver, I think, to kind of look away from the spotter. So you're going to see YouTube videos a lot where people are looking out their window to spot themselves, and that's fine too. But if you're going to use the spotter, then you need to use the spotter all the way through. Now, you as the driver, I've talked about, have a lot of power when you're driving your Jeep. It's your Jeep. If you are new or relatively new and you're not sure about it, this obstacle, get out and watch the spotter who's there getting people through. What are they doing? What are they saying? How are they getting the Jeeps through? A fairly good way to tell if a spotter is going to be decent is that if everybody gets through and nobody really gets stuck. Now, I say that with a caveat. As a spotter that I've been, there are times when I'm giving you the correct commands, but you don't follow them, and then you get yourself into a bind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say if you're watching somebody who is, constantly putting every single Jeep in the wrong line and they're constantly getting stuck, that's probably the spotter's fault. You have the choice to decide who's going to spot you. And Amanda, you wheel with a lot of people. Have you ever been in a situation where you thought, this guy really isn't giving me the commands I need, I'm going to use somebody else? Have you ever done that?
100%.
Yeah.
100% I have. And I think it's okay to just opt out. But like you were
Yeah.
saying, if you start with a spotter, a lot of times, it's best to follow through. But if you see that it's not working out or something you don't feel comfortable with, just say, hey, so-and-so is going to spot me, or I got this
Right.
one. I see the line.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
communicate that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, sometimes when you're new, you're afraid to speak up or you're afraid to speak out. And you also don't know what you don't know. So it's okay to let that person put you through that obstacle. You're going to learn some things, but what you can do to make it more successful is to do everything in tiny, tiny increments. So when someone says driver, it doesn't mean to take your steering wheel and go full lock. It means to go very, very tiny, little tiny movements. Now, the spotter will ask you for more if they want it. And this is where I talk about the shouting matches sometimes. So a good spotter has major, major patience. If you're looking at somebody or watching somebody and they're screaming, I'd probably opt out and use somebody else. Like, I don't need to be screamed at. I'm here to have fun and enjoy my time, and I want to learn, especially being a newbie. So that would be one context where I would say maybe you want to find somebody else. Usually you're wheeling with somebody inside your Jeep who could actually be a better spotter than somebody who's standing out there screaming. So if you're listening and you're an experienced spotter, please don't scream at your newbies. It's not their fault. They're learning. So let's talk about this. Let me give you some examples of some verbal commands that are most often used. And I'll give a little brief explanation of them. And then we'll talk about why I don't necessarily care for those. I know it sounds funny, doesn't it? Probably 80 to 90% of everybody uses verbal, but I like nonverbal. And I'm going to explain that in a little bit. And then we're going to talk more in our next episode. So, all right, some examples. You're going to hear the word driver or turn driver. Essentially, what that means is that you want to turn your wheels toward the driver. So you are the driver. You have passenger, driver, and passenger. You want to turn that steering wheel toward the driver. Passenger would be the same, turning it toward the passenger or toward the passenger side of your Jeep. You may hear the word easy. That's used a lot too. That's meaning to go easy on the throttle or the brake. So if you're climbing, they may want you to go easy with that throttle as opposed to mashing it down. And also if you're coming downhill on that brake, you're going to hear that word a lot because as a spotter at the bottom of a hill, I need you to be on that brake. I do not need you to just, send it and then, take me out in the meantime. You may not hear control your rear a lot. I use this word a lot because what that does is we talked about this. People go on a line and they get those front tires cleared and then they think I'm free. So I will use the command control your rear because I want you to come down off that obstacle super, super slow and ease back off the rocks so that you're not bouncing off your bumper or very well putting yourself in a bad position for the next obstacle. So you may hear the words control your rear. Again, I'm not sure I hear that a lot from a lot of people, but they may say easy on the back or come down slow, something like that. Now, one command that is universal in nonverbal and verbal is the word stop. It is very, very important that when you hear the word stop, you stop and freeze. Don't think it means somebody's outside of your vehicle to stop. If you hear this command, there is something going to happen, could be good or bad, and you need to stop the vehicle. We need that motion to stop. So what this means is it could be that you're slightly off. Maybe they said driver and you turned way too much driver. And they need you to stop because we've got to get it corrected before you completely pull the whole vehicle off the line. Maybe somebody, a kid, a dog, anything got in the way that you can't see because you're focused on exactly what that spotter's telling you to do, but you're not being aware that there's things going on around you. Maybe a tree limb or a big rock gets twisted or turned and is now in your way that wasn't there. There could be a numerous amount of reasons that they would say stop, and you in the driver's seat may not be able to see it or know what's going on. So stopping is super important. You do not take your foot off the brake please do not reset like, oh, I'm going to put it in park now and then take my foot off the brake. We all know what happens to our vehicles when that happens, right, Amanda? You roll
Yes.
forward or backwards. Yeah,
Yes.
I've had that happen on a trail where this guy was not paying attention to me, and that's fine. So we had somebody else step in, and he got himself stuck like 3 or 4 times. Finally, this last time, he was so stuck that we had to use an actual jack to get him out. And my husband said, stop. So the guy stopped. We were going to put some additional rocks underneath to help him get lifted out because we were struggling he got himself in such a pickle. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And so he decides after several moments, probably minutes, as we're doing everything, there's people underneath the Jeep, there's people working around him, to take his foot off the brake and put it in park. Now, those of you that know Bill, very, very, very patient man. I thought he was going to pull this guy through the windshield. He was just, because I was underneath and all he could see was that vehicle rolling and possibly pinning me. So when you hear the word stop, you do not adjust until you are told differently. Please, please, as a newbie, the word stop can actually save someone. It can keep you off of the line. And again, we're not talking about major obstacles here where there's a big thing, but there's a lot of times when we wheel and you need to stop on a point or stop it a certain way because we got to move you a little bit more to get those rears to do what they need to do. So have you ever had that experience, Amanda, where someone's yelling stop and you're like, I don't know what's going on. I can't see.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Especially like because we do some gnarly stuff, right? And sometimes I can't see, like Mike, if he's spotting me or whatever. You can't see, so you're just honed in on that verbal, and so
Yeah.
I can't see exactly what's going on. So you have to be on point with that. And I've seen
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you're talking about, where people don't stop, and I've seen rocks shoot out and almost hit
Oh,
people
yeah.
and things like that because they're just not listening. So yeah,
Yeah.
you especially if you can't see your spotter and you can't see what's going on, you got to hone into that. And if somebody
Yeah.
says stop, you don't know why, and maybe they'll say
Right.
stop and then give you further direction, but you
Yeah.
start with that.
Yeah. And the stop is a complete stop. You don't let off the brake. You don't get out of what's going on? You wait for that command. So I guess the bottom line is when you are using the spotter and they're giving you these verbal commands, you need to listen. You need to pay attention. I've had several people along the years where they'll start using me and then they decide to stick their head out or do whatever they want. And I'm like, okay, you got to pick and choose. Either I'm helping you or you're doing it yourself. And I'm okay either way. I don't have an ego in the game, but I like to be able to use all the way through. Now, sometimes somebody who's very experienced may say, can you get me started? And then I want to finish it. Go for it.
Perfect.
If you've got experience, but you're just not sure to get the line just right, I'm okay to get you started. But you got to have that communication. Now, I will have a verbal communication with my driver prior to me starting them. I want them to know what commands I'm going to use. And in another episode, because this is a big, long topic, by the way, I'm going to talk about nonverbal commands and why I like them. But for now, we're talking about verbal today. But if I was going to use verbal, I would say to them, when I say driver, this is what I mean. I don't want you to go full lock. I want you to do little tiny increments. If I say passenger, I'm going to explain to them what it means. And I'm going to remind them what the word stop means. I always like to do this little quick, maybe it's like 30 seconds to remind this driver, especially if they're new. But that's me being a mentor too. I want to make sure that the driver has a good experience. And let's face it, if I'm in front of your Jeep and I'm trusting that you're going to listen to me, I'm also trusting that you're not going to run over me. I mean, there's a big deal when you spot. So when I start with somebody and I can see how they're driving, if they're willing to listen to me, I can be closer to their vehicle to help them through. But if I see that they're maybe not listening, they're distracted, maybe there's a little ego involved, which that happens sometimes, like, hey, I know it all. I've been here forever. I'm going to be back away from the vehicle, maybe 1 or 2 lengths away from that vehicle, because I need to always have an out. So if you're listening and you're a spotter, you need to always have an exit plan when you're spotting somebody. And we haven't kind of talked about this too much, but it's very important that you can run or jump or move. So if you're not physically fit or you're not quite, sure of your ability, I'm not necessarily the most physically fit, but I always have an out. It's going to be up a hill or whatever. I'm going to look at where the Jeep might be going. and try to run in an opposite direction is what I'm saying. So as a spotter, you need to be very, very careful. And I know when you have a friend or maybe your spouse spotting you, then you're going to see on YouTube where they're super close to the vehicles, almost a little too close for my comfort. I like to have a good, probably vehicle length distance. Lots of times with an obstacle, I am down a little bit or up. So I've got to climb. I've got to get myself in a position to do that. And so that's something that you may need to wait for. So you as a newbie driver need to wait for your commands. So just because we had this little talk and now I'm walking up the rocks to get in my position doesn't mean you take off. Because usually as a spotter, I need to put your vehicle in a certain position. The other thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is when I move you forward, you may say to yourself, what is she doing? This makes no logical sense. The trail goes this way, but she's got my vehicle angled this way. So that also works with the brain because it's natural to want to go where the Jeep is going or where your brain thinks the trail is going. The spotter sees it completely different. I see a trail where I know I'm going to get you to this spot, but I've got to move you so far this way to get your rears lined up so that when I bring your front around, you are perfectly lined up to go over that obstacle without even knowing what you're doing. So keep that in mind that when you're given those commands, you may think that spotter's lost their mind because they're moving the vehicle in a different way. So I would say to the newbies, make sure that you are paying attention, listening to whatever they're doing, whether it's nonverbal or verbal, and just follow what they tell you to do because sometimes it may not make any logical sense. Have you had that experience? I'm sure you have, where you're like, I need to go left. Why are they pulling me right? Have you noticed that?
Oh, 100%. And I think you brought up several important things there where you talked about that you as a spotter tell the person that you're spotting what you're going to say. I'm going to say
Yes.
passenger, driver, stop, whatever. Okay. A lot of them don't, right?
Right.
And as a newbie driver, and we talked about this in previous episodes with lines about getting out and watching, that's an important thing too.
Yeah.
Maybe listening to that spotter spot somebody else at the obstacle, right? And so you kind of know what to expect. What are they saying? Are they saying driver?
Yeah.
Are they saying passenger? Are they putting somebody to the driver's side, but the trail looks like it goes to the passenger side? Maybe get a little bit of that in your mind first, kind of so you know what to expect. Because not all spotters are going to, communicate that to you when they start. And so you know what to expect, because I've done that a million times where I think, oh, look, the line is here. And then I pull up to it and I get on it. And maybe the line was there, but now it's shifted because, I got my rear end over or whatever.
Right.
And so I have to, and that comes with experience, right? Because it starts out uncomfortable, but I just have to know, like, they can see it. I can't.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, when you're new in your driver's meeting, when you arrive to a group run like this, you're going to be able to have a quiet moment to say, hey, before we go over some of these obstacles, can you just share with me what you're going to be saying? Or you can say to them, I'm really new. I need some guidance. If you pull up to that line and they're starting to give you these verbal commands and you're not sure, ask the person to come and explain it to you. I mean, that's the best thing. Now, most of us who spot and most of us who are mentors in this industry, in this world of Jeeping, we have no problem explaining. We have no problem wanting to help you. This is all part of how we pass it along and we make sure that you have a good experience. If you find somebody who's not willing to help you, that's a good indication that you don't want to use them, but you may be in a weird position. I'm on this run. I don't know anybody. I've asked for help and they're not really helping me. You know what? You're going to get through it. So don't fret it. Don't worry about it. These are just giving you some information about, how can I do some different things? How can I stand up for myself when I don't really know what I'm talking about? Because let's face it, when I started brand new, I had no idea what I'm talking about right now. I didn't even know there was a spotter. I wasn't even aware that my husband was actually getting me through obstacles. I didn't even know what that meant. So what I did is I got out and I learned, I watched. And luckily I had two of the best mentors in this industry and I picked it up super quick. And I have this really interesting ability to look at how those tires are going. I don't even look at the Jeep. I look at the tires and I look at the obstacle and I figure out where am I going to place everybody? Which tire needs to go where? Is that rock going to move or not move? What do I need to tell this driver? So again, that's my experience. Everybody else has a different MO in that. So let me share with you, Amanda, why I don't like verbal commands. And it's hard because the majority of the industry has used verbal forever, and so it's sort of like understood that if you drive a Jeep, you know what driver and passenger mean, or you know what a little bit means or whatever. So one of my biggest things is when a spotter says driver out loud to you and you're in that driver's seat, do you know, Amanda, exactly how much that means? Is it a little bit? Is it a lot? Is it full lock? I mean, honestly.
Yeah. So, no. And when you first start, you certainly don't. And if it's the first time you're ever using that person as a spotter, nope. Now, like if it's Micah who spots me and he says driver, it's a relationship built. But no, there's no exact science to driver. You know what I
Right.
mean?
So, yeah. So the spotter's looking at you. So even Micah's looking at you and he says driver. My guess is you're moving little tiny increments now that you guys have experience together. You're
Mm-hmm.
never sending it full lock
Never.
because, and if he wants more, he'll say driver and you'll go a little bit more and he'll say driver, more driver. Okay. A little bit. Okay. Stop. That's what he would say. My guess, just in knowing that's how most of the verbal goes.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
And
Yeah.
if so, a spoiler alert, if I can see him, which I think you're going to get into this, he gauges me on how much driver or
Right.
passenger so that we can move more quickly through it. But a lot of times you can't.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but yeah, it's not an exact
Yeah.
science by any means.
And there will be some, which we'll talk about next time, nonverbal, where you use your hands and you're sort of pointing. I love this one where they actually point driver or driver, passenger. I don't know how the video is going to take that anyway. But, and so again, my biggest peeve with that is, well, how much is driver and how much is passenger? So when you're brand new and somebody says that, and then your brain is playing with, but the path goes this way, but they're pointing me this way. You newbies tend to go more full lock. They tend to actually over exaggerate because you're in a spot where you're not sure what you're doing. You're feeling a little bit out of control, honestly. That's really what it is. And so you think by turning the wheel, I'm in control again. It's the same theory when you come off a rock with the fronts and your brain says, oh, I cleared it because where you're sitting has cleared. Your front tires have cleared, but you forget about those darn rears. So that's where you have to just have complete patience. Remember, it's called crawling. And when you go through an obstacle, it's very, very slow and little tiny movements. So the biggest thing I have is that what does that mean when someone says to do something verbally without any reference of how much should I turn? How much should I brake? How much should I go faster and do more throttle? So that is where you learn as a newbie finessing. I talk about in other episodes. If you've listened to me enough time on the Jeep Talk Show, I have a whole segment about feeling your Jeep, which is a completely foreign thing to us because the Jeep is metal. How on the earth am I supposed to feel it? Well, when you drive and you start to get out there, you feel what your tires are doing. You feel what that Jeep is doing. How long does it take to get over an obstacle based on your length and width? And then all of a sudden you understand so that when someone says to do driver, you're like, oh, I'm going to go a tiny little bit because you've watched people and even moving your tires a tiny little bit can actually change the trajectory of those rears. So it is super important to take little tiny movements. That spotter will ask you for more if they need it. So for me, the verbal is tougher because the driver tends to not really comprehend what you actually mean as a spotter. So I don't know if you've seen that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this just comes with experience. And I think seat time, when you talk about feeling your Jeep, and this correlates to the verbal commands, or it correlates to any
Mm-hmm.
commands, because it's that seat time that gets you there, because you're exactly right, feeling your Jeep. Because if you looked at that obstacle, right, and this comes with experience, and you feel that Jeep, you can kind of gauge how much driver, how much passenger, because now
Right.
I've wheeled my Jeep for so long and I've had so much seat time and I'm comfortable in it that
Yeah.
I can tell you, like, even with on an early obstacle with a good spotter or whatever, it's going to go or it's not. Or I can hit a line and say, no, this one isn't working. We need to do something
Right.
different. And that just
Yeah.
comes with the experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes I always say jokingly, like here in Big Bear, Southern California, we have John Bull and Gold Mountain. It's kind of fun just to go and watch the gatekeeper. And a gatekeeper, for those of you that are new, don't know, is kind of an obstacle that is built to not let just street vehicles through. It is usually built and designed for a certain vehicle, meaning had to have lifted rockers, that kind of stuff. If you can't make it through the gatekeeper, you're not going to make the rest of the trail. But it's fun to sit at the gatekeeper sometimes and watch. And you can learn a lot. Maybe you know the line of that gatekeeper. Maybe you're used to that particular trail. And just grab a chair, grab a soda, and sit back and watch. When you see the way people spot others, you learn a lot. Good and bad, things that you don't ever want to do. And I call it the husband and wife team, because in generally the husband's saying, hey, I want my wife to drive. So he puts her in the driver's seat. He doesn't kind of give her a real clue. Maybe sometimes, this is not everybody, by the way. There's fabulous husband and wife teams out there. But maybe he's just saying, hey, I want you to drive today. And she's like, well, I'm not really sure. And he doesn't give her that confidence and that background that we kind of do here on the show. But then all of a sudden he's like, driver, I said driver, more driver. And she's just like, I don't know what that means. That's the kind of stuff where you don't build the confidence for somebody. So if you're a spotter out there and you lose your patience a little bit, or you don't like that this person didn't listen to you, then go back to that driver, walk back and say, hey, are we okay? Do you still want to use me? I said, driver, this is what I mean by it. Did you not understand? Have a conversation, because maybe that driver was distracted. Maybe they don't like your commands. Maybe they don't understand your commands. So rather than getting upset at them, maybe take that moment to go back to that driver and have a conversation. So, because it does make a difference. And listen, we all want to wheel. We all want to have these great experiences. And Amanda, you know this, when you start off, you're not having very many obstacles. And pretty soon you're like, well, I think I want to try a couple, and we want you to have the best experience. We want you to be able to get out there and go, I did that. I can't believe I did that. And then be able to progress from there. So any other thoughts you want to add?
Yeah, spotting is a relationship, right? Where communication is key. During that moment when you're on that obstacle or on that trail, you are building a relationship with this person that's getting you through that. And so you have to talk with them, you have to respect them, and hopefully the spotter does the same for you. And it can make or break somebody's day. It can make or break somebody's experience. I was so thankful to have so many good friends that are talented off-roaders that
Mm-hmm.
just took the time to spot me, educate me, challenge me when I didn't,
Yeah.
feel confident. And, that is what created the burning passion that I have for it. And so I think if you are a spotter on the trail, just keep that in mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To hopefully ignite the passion instead of,
Yeah.
putting it out.
Well, and there's all kinds of spotters. I mean, there's people who've been wheeling forever. There's people who spot themselves from the seat of their Jeep, which is fabulous. I mean, if you know the trail or you don't, but you understand your Jeep, that's the ultimate goal, is to never use a spotter. But there are trails. We have them down here in Big Bear, and there's trails all over this country that you're going to need help. And it's okay. I always like to say to the men out there with the egos, it's okay to ask for help. That doesn't mean that you didn't know something. It means that it's just an extra set of eyes outside of your vehicle to reduce the potential or possibility of carnage. And, if you're with a group of people and they are sending it and they're just revving their engines and breaking stuff, if that's your deal, and you can mend and you have money, I always say you got this big pocket full of money to pay for all those parts, go for it. But the majority of people who are out wheeling, we got to drive our Jeep home. We're not on a trailer. We didn't set it up with 40s or, big, huge axles and all that kind of stuff. So we're out there to have fun, to explore. The idea is to get to a location, have lunch with a view, see some of this beautiful country, being able to get to places that you cannot get there unless you walk or maybe by horseback and a Jeep. So I just want to let people know that when you are out there and you're in a group, don't be afraid. Spotters can be a huge, huge contribution to making sure that you have a fun time. And it is great. So, and again, if you're spotting, please take the time to let that driver know how you're going to communicate. And like I said, Amanda, we've got 2 more segments of this to talk about. So
Mhm.
hopefully our listeners will come back. We do air every other episode. So we'll be here on this Monday, which we're on now, and then we'll go 2 weeks and do the next one. But I'm going to talk about nonverbal commands and what those mean and how that is a benefit. And then I'll talk about my favorite way to spot, which is a combination of nonverbal. But it just gives you some more information, and it'll be interesting to hear, Amanda, if you've ever had someone spot that way, because it's a whole different ballgame when you're in that driver's seat. So anyway, so anything you want to share on spotting or your experience? Maybe you had a good experience or maybe a bad one.
I've had a little of both. And I think that just comes with it. And that, it's learning experiences that's pushing you out of your comfort zone. That is, like you're talking about, the goals is to not necessarily use a spotter. Well, maybe you get to the point where you're like, hey, watch the line. Tell me if I get off the line, and you're trying to spot yourself. There's so many ways to like play on the role of a spotter. And it is so
Yes.
important. And it helps you challenge yourself, right? Because maybe they
Yeah.
can help you move to the next level. And it's so important. And yeah, I mean, I think I want to hear some feedback from some of our viewers about, how do they like to be spotted? Verbal,
Yeah.
nonverbal. I hope that we can get some, engagement on these segments, and people can tell us what works for them, maybe some good experiences, maybe some bad.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too, I was going to say is that it's good to use your spouse if you guys get along great, or a friend, but it's also good to let other people spot you.
Mm-hmm.
I have had multiple people spot me. When you have had the best, I hate to keep referring to that, and then you get spotted by somebody else who's learning, it's a great way for me to help them, because I know that spotter is learning. I have great experience as a driver and a spotter. So I'm not going to overcorrect. I'm not going to try to guess. I'm going to let that person put me through this obstacle. And then if they ask for feedback, great. If not, then they're learning. So there's also that part where I know how to do this, but I'm going to let this spotter have an experience. And the only way for us to get better is to go out and do it. That's the honest key. But my push on that is make sure that you are getting out of the vehicle and watching other spotters or spotter getting all those people through, seeing how those lines go through. I talk about this too when you're going through. Try to watch the vehicle that's most closely to your size and basic wheel type, as in, 4-door versus 2-door versus a Gladiator, because that getting through an obstacle could be slightly different. The spotter has to be able to adjust. A good spotter doesn't put a 2-door the same line that a Gladiator has to go through. This is probably not going to work. But that comes with experience too. You have to learn and understand that there's different size vehicles. And then you deal with everybody who's in the passenger side. What experience do they have? I'm always honored when I wheel with people with experience and they say, "Hey, Wendy, can you spot me?" To me, that's like, wow, this person knows what they're doing. They could probably do it on their own, but they're asking me for my set of eyes. So it's also an honor when you are a spotter to be able to spot people through that know what the heck they're doing. So anyway, but it's all good.
Yeah,
It's all
I'm
good.
with you. I'm with you on that, letting people, have the experience. Like for me, I can spot. I have a fair amount of experience. Am I the most confident person at it? No, but I learn. But also, like Micah and I are talking about the husband and wife team. Um, like we know our rigs. We wheeled together so much. I know
Right.
his rig, and so there's been times where maybe he was on a super challenging obstacle or vice versa, and somebody else was trying to spot him, and like it wasn't working. And so we gave it a few shots. Then I'm like, hey, let's try this line because maybe I see the
Yeah.
line. I've seen his Jeep. I know I'm there when we built it, right? So I
Right.
knew what it
Yeah.
can do. I know what it can't. And then we go up that line, so it's just
Yeah.
different things like that. You have to be open to the experience, I think, is the
Yeah.
key.
Well, and we've talked about picking a line, and generally there's 2 to 3 options on every obstacle. I mean, almost everyone that I could think of. There are a couple where you have only one line. Well, that's easy. But you also, like when my husband was driving, he likes to take the super hard ones. And so it's like he challenges me as a spotter to go, okay, this isn't the line that I would put everybody else through, because you're trying to get people through. You want them to have an experience, but you don't want to sit there and have things break or do stuff. So you also have to decide as a spotter, Am I going to put everybody through the basic line? I'm not going to do the easy line, but I'm not going to do the super hard line. But my husband wants to do the hard line. Well, that's fine. So then that gets my brain working to go, okay, I've got to challenge myself to figure out, can I get him through that, And usually it works if he wants the spotter. But that's something else too, where maybe within, like you guys, you and Micah might want to do something different. You might want to do something different. So it challenges you to get out of that comfort zone. And like I said, yes, you can stick with who you like to spot you. Like for a while, it was just Bill spotting me the whole time because I was learning. And then Don Alexander got involved. And then we were teaching and training. And then I was standing next to Don as he's bringing people through. And I'm like, holy cow, look at what I'm learning. And all of a sudden it just clicked. So you can learn by also working with somebody else, but you do need to have other people spot you from time to time because it just gives you a different sense. And maybe their technique is different. You can pick up something as a spotter because you learned something. I learned so much from Dawn on the nonverbal, and I'll show you what it is on the next episode, that's all I do. In fact, for me to use verbal commands is so rare that I have to tell my drivers, this is how I'm going to have you follow me. And they're like, but I only know driver and passenger. I'm like, listen to what I'm going to do. And it's so cool to do it anyway, but it is different. So anyway, but that's what I would say too, is don't get complacent with the same person spotting you all the time, because they may think you are at a level of X and you might want to try Y, you might try something harder. And they're like, well, but I think you should stay here. No, give yourself that experience of when you understand your Jeep and you feel confident, let someone else spot you too. I mean, it could be good or bad, but your partner's with you to get you out of a mess if there is a problem. So try different things, have fun, just enjoy it. So.
That's part of the learning experience. Is there so many people with so much knowledge in this industry, hobby, lifestyle,
Yeah.
soak it in, take what you can get and learn from it.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun, or it is for me.
Yeah, I agree. And I know YouTube, I keep referencing that, can be a benefit. It can also be a detriment. So make sure that you're in that seat, having the experience. I don't like people to use their cameras. That's another one that happens. You got these new fancy Jeeps that have these front cameras. And so I see people where they're looking down at the camera and I'm like, whoa, you need to be looking out around. You need to see who's there. Yes, but the camera shows me everything. No, it doesn't. It doesn't give you feeling. It doesn't tell you how deep that is. It doesn't give you that sense of, that rock you're going to go up and over. So I tend to, when we were teaching a lot, was no, turn all the electronics off. Sorry. This is a feeling thing, because you want to be able to get out there and experience what your Jeep is doing. Watching a camera or waiting for your, what do they have, that downhill assist for speed? Oh my gosh, turn it all off. Anyway, that's a whole nother subject. We'll talk about technology on the Jeeps.
Right? Then it is literally a whole subject. And listen, me and the downhill assist don't get along. And I do think, I think it's best to learn and then incorporate the tools. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like I think
learning
like raw. You know what I mean?
Well, that's how you're going to learn and how you're going to get that feel of your Jeep. If you rely on all your technology to do it for you, are you really wheeling? I mean, I just want to know. I mean, someone can say to me, you're crazy, Wendy. And if that's all you can do and that's how you get started, then go for it. I think the problem with technology is if your camera goes out, how are you going to get over the obstacle? If your downhill assist goes out, how are you going to learn to use your braking? If you're climbing a hill and do not understand left foot braking because your lockers went out, what? Stop. Learn to drive the Jeep. Learn to get those experiences, because when technology fails, you're going to be like, I'm good. I mean, we try so hard to never use lockers climbing. And sometimes you use left foot braking, and we could talk about that in another episode too. That's a whole nother ball game.
That's one of my
feeling weird.
That's one of my favorite topics, Wendy. We're adding that after we finish this. We're doing that because to me, I learned before lockers, right? And so the 2-foot driving is where it's at. I am passionate.
Yeah, it is
about
so
it,
amazing.
So.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we call a poor man's locker, by the way. So you don't have to have lockers to do any of the stuff we do, but you do need to learn to do that left foot braking and 2-foot driving, as it's called. So anyway, that's cool. We'll do that again. So, all right. So listeners, you got a lot to come back and listen with us now, because we're going to continue spotting. We got spotting, and then I'm going to talk about being a good spotter. I think we should do that episode too, because I think there's a lot of people out there spotting, and we want to make sure they have that patience. And we'll talk a little bit about that so that newbies can understand how to find those good people to spot with. So we've got a lot of great stuff to do. I can't wait.
I love it. I love it.
Cool. All right. Well, this has been a great episode. I think we should sort of end here. So that's good stuff. You guys, if you're listening and you want to chime in, email us, go to xjtalk.com/contact. Let us know if there's a topic you think we should also be covering. Amanda and I can dive into just about anything now. Like we're the A team.
You got it, Wendy. I love it.
Sounds good. All right. Make sure you're following us on Instagram. What is it? Facebook. And what else is he on? He's on a bunch of other stuff. I can't think of all the stuff.
He's on TikTok now too.
TikTok, I know.
We're on all the places.
Well, now talk about the roundtable that we do on the Chic Chat, because I've not been able to join you guys. I've been out of town.
Yeah. So we've started incorporating a couple times a month the Chic Chat roundtable, where we do it live on TikTok and on the JTS Chic Chat Instagram. So if we're check out the JTS Instagram, because we post all the details on that so people can join us live, and it's interactive where people are jumping on with us. We're talking, we're answering questions, we're diving into topics that are important to our viewers. So it's a lot of fun. And we're going to get to these episodes before long, Wendy.
I know. It's so funny because you guys will say, it's tonight. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to work. I'm like, I need to pick a day that I don't have to work. Or I plan it ahead of time is what I should do. So anyway. All right, you guys, thanks for listening. We appreciate you guys checking in, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Broadcasting since 2010.
You're my friend. You're my new friend.